Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together in our Cleveland studio. Man, a lot to get into. Rough week in the markets. I got a lot to say, but first of all, how you doing? We've kind of turned the opening into recovery update, so you're getting around a lot better. It seems.
Yeah. Every week, it seems that my leg and my quad tendon tear/repair are getting stronger. I didn't do myself any favors this week. I was down in Texas for the U.S. Housing Conference, and the hotel that I stayed in was really nice. Sheraton, downtown Dallas, but it's a really big hotel. And when you're limping on one leg with that doesn't bend,
bags and
yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, I'm still plenty strong enough to carry stuff and everything else. It just takes me longer to get places.
It's got weight and awkwardness to it. I mean, change your balance.
When you got good balance in core strength gym, that shit doesn't phase you.
I'm so sorry, Mister.
But it was tough because it was a big hotel. So getting from my room to the conference area was just I had to build in additional time to actually get there. But no, it was good. It was productive.
I jokingly asked you to go to Dealey Plaza and take pictures, which you were going to do. And I was like, are you fucking? I'm fucking around.
Yeah, there was no way I could get that. I mean, okay. I didn't have a lot of time on my schedule, and I would have done it for you, but
I appreciate that you would have done it. And if you were fully mobile, I might have actually asked you to.
Yeah,
but I was joking around. You said you would do it. I'm like, no, don't. Yeah. I'll get pictures of you blowing out of leg in fucking Dealey Plaza.
That's the one thing that annoys me, you motherfuckers. It was fixed, right? I have to get hit by a bus for this thing to get re-injured. Everybody relax. But anyway.
Right, well, I'm fine. And since I've already solved the JFK assassination, I didn't need you to do that. Text me if you want to.
Yeah, but no, it was a good productive trip. Got to see some family while I was there, which was good that I hadn't seen in a long time. And, we'll keep moving, but it was a good trip. I was very happy that I went. It was productive on the work side. If you're 6 weeks out of surgery from a major lower body injury repair, I don't recommend flying. Especially a 3-hour flight. No, I did book a first class seat.
Okay, good. Because the leg room would be huge.
I had to have the leg room because when I went to book the flight, there were no emergency row seats. And then even if there were, I'm like, I don't even know if they'll let me sit in an emergency row seat.
If you want to perform these tasks, great.
Right.
Can you?
Can you? I'm like, so I booked the first class seat, which was very nice. But there were some other little perks. So because of the brace and my obvious limp and everything else, I got to go through the wheelchair line. So, TSA was really quick. PSA, Palmetto State Armory.
Or public service announcement.
Yeah, and so that was cool. I got to board the plane first, in the first group, priority. So I'm already sitting first class, boarding early, but I got to board earlier than the first class people, which was, it's kind of absurd, but I appreciated it. And let me tell you, getting off the plane, oh my God, as soon as I stood up, after the 3-hour flight, I'm like, oh, leg is not feeling great, and so. I hurried up and kind of hobbled off to the side. And then, it took me a second to kind of get my bearings. Let me tell you this shit. So I'm flying out of Dallas. I get an Uber, right? Get an Uber, picks me up at the hotel. Nice guy.
Airport.
Or he picks me up at, no, leaving when I'm coming back to Ohio from Dallas. So I get my Uber at the hotel. Nice enough guy. We have some chit chat. And then he was on the phone, whatever. And so I'm on the phone. And, he asked me who do I fly through, blah, blah, blah. So I tell him. So he's like, oh, I can drop you off right in front of your gate. And I'm like, but I still, okay, sure. So he says, which gate? And I'm like, A15. So he takes me to door A15 at DFW. Gate A15 at DFW is literally at the end of the drop-off area at the airport. It's nowhere near TSA or security,
shit.
Right? And he
good intentions,
and he had results. Really good intentions. But so I get out, and mind you, it's in a big Suburban, so I have to sit. I get in the back, and then I've got my leg up, and then I got to back out of a car door, which is not exactly graceful. And I kind of get caught, and fortunately there was somebody there to help me. It was a mess. So anyway, I walk through the door, and there's literally nothing there, right? Like it's just like a wall. And, and that airport is under construction. So I'm like, what? So I look, and all the signs are pointing that way. It felt like I had to walk a country mile to get to TSA. I am sweating, right? Because I am trying to hump, and I'm dragging this fucking leg with me. And I get to TSA, and the guy is just like, he looks at me, he looks at my brace, and he's just like, "You running late?" And I look at my watch, and I was like, "No, I got plenty of time. I just got dropped off, too far down." And then he's just like, "Yeah, why don't you go ahead and just go through the wheelchair line here, buddy?" You know what I mean? Like he just kind of he felt bad for me, and then I get through security, and I make it and everything. But it just, I will say that this just, and I've said it before on the show, it does make me appreciate people who have, lifelong or long-standing, sort of disabilities and or whatever we want to call them. Because it just, there's certain things that you don't really think about when you got two working legs, but when you don't, all of a sudden, shit gets a lot harder. So, more appreciation for those people who, will have to deal with something like this for, a lifetime or whatever it may be. But anyway.
Well, glad you're back. Yes, on to business. All right, so no Dealey Plaza pictures and a walk with the guy.
You don't need the pictures. You solved the JFK murder.
I did. And I do feel bad for the driver because he probably thought he was doing you. I mean, he doesn't know what you went through.
Well, so he doesn't know, but I did kind of say how are you going to drop me off at the gate? I still have to go through security, and he kind of just ignored it. So I don't really feel bad at him.
All right.
I mean, just like we were just talking before the show about people being, very loud and wrong.
Yes, we were.
So anyway,
all right.
Let's get into this because I want to talk about these tariffs.
Yeah. So the tariffs were enacted. The markets plummeted. I have not looked at my retirement accounts. I don't want to. I would bet I'm down $50,000. And I might be underestimating. And hearing, all right, so if you don't know what's happening, shame on you. But Trump enacted tariffs that he called reciprocal tariffs, and that's a fucking lie. He instituted them. Other countries responded to us in a reciprocal way. The world markets have been thrown into a flux, and I know I'm getting fucked.
Well, so I want to say one thing, right? So Trump saying there's reciprocal tariffs. There's people are throwing around terms. We're not going to get into the difference between tariffs and a VAT tax. VAT. We won't get into all that. But what I will say is, other countries do charge tariffs on American goods, but those have already been priced in for long before Trump became president the first time, right? So, but to your point, so he institutes these tariffs and implements them, and they're having a direct effect because people are countering, right? And reciprocating. And, that's where this is, and that's what sort of once you initiate, they initiate, raising, and then it gets you into this sort of back and forth there's no real winners in a tariff war. And we've seen this in 1828. And it kind of ends up being part of what gets us into the Civil War. We institute taxes in 1828. It benefits the North with manufacturing. Right. It hurts the South with agriculture. South is, threatening to secede. Right. And that's where people who try to say the Civil War was about states' rights, that's kind of where they go to, trying to make it not about slavery. But we know that the Civil War was about slavery, but...
And those things are not
right, but those things aren't independent, right? It's just we have the right to, what? Own slaves. Yes, that's
and
not
you
good.
Get free labor,
right?
For
exactly.
The
so
things that you're trying to sell overseas, which are being tariffs.
But we don't want to go into that. So then, in 1930, we see tariffs again, right? Yes, right. And you've got the Smoot-Hawley Act, and essentially what happens there is that we institute tariffs, and starts a trade war. We're not getting stuff. Prices are going up. It really sort of pushes the Great Depression even, it depresses it more, so to speak. So then we're just like, okay, tariffs are bad, right? Last two times we've used them, they've caused more problems than they've solved. And, you institute tariffs with a stroke of a pen, but it takes a long time to undo the damage that's done once the war is started if it's not quickly sort of resolved. And here we are again. And we even, like, you can even talk about how Reagan handled things, and we saw some of this, but really, here we are again. Tariffs, we're going to make a bunch of money, and everybody's going to capitulate. It's going to bring, manufacturing back to the U.S. and everything else. And it's just like, look, here's an example. Why do we use timber from Canada?
Because they have an abundance of it. It's easily delivered to us, and it's economically feasible.
No, that's not why.
Okay, why?
It is the best wood in the world to use to build with. That's why we use it, right?
Everything. You're in construction. I'm not.
Now, everything else you said is absolutely true. But the main reason why is because it is the best wood in the world to build with. Now, the other part is the main reason why. How many people do they have to be able to cut down trees, process the trees, and get them out right into the world for production? Right? Literally, it's like 10-1 in terms of both labor, and then it's like 5-1 in terms of the facilities in which you need to process lumber. Right? How long do you think it would take us to get enough people to sort of match their production and the facilities to match their production in the U.S., right? Like, and Trump's just like...
There's an infrastructure...
Right, that infrastructure piece. Listen, it's taken me nearly 2 years to get 8 single-family homes built in the U.S., like going through entitlements and getting approvals and grant awards and all this other stuff, right? And you're talking about a $3 million project, right? 2 years to get a $3 million project building single-family homes that are relatively easy to build if we're talking in comparison to building facilities to, manufacture processed wood and everything else. For factories and facilities to handle these sort of things, going back to the infrastructure, these projects are tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, right, per facility to get done. And just with the way the U.S. is set up with our zoning laws and our permitting process and everything else, like you're not going to see the benefits of any of this stuff in terms of manufacturing and production coming back on the U.S. side. It's not like, listen,
for years.
Even like, yes, we have lumber facilities here. Lumber manufacturing and processing plants here. We have,
national forests full of trees.
Right,
and
we have all that stuff. But the reality is that we don't have the infrastructure to actually implement it in the time it's going to take, right, to match the demand, right? It's not. Chances are, by the time you get all this stuff up and running, like Trump will be out of office, right, or at the end of his term at least, depending on whether he goes or not, is a different conversation, right? Aluminum, aluminum is another one, right? Why do we import aluminum, right? Because they have like more smelting factories times like 10 than we do, right? So how long do you think it takes to get a smelting factory off the ground, right?
Smelting's a fun word to say.
It is. I do like to say smelting, but it just like, and that's sort of the like reality of all of this, where it's just like, oh, it's going to bring it back to America, and then you have to use America. It's like you don't have.
All right, so we had a bit of a technical glitch. We don't know exactly what. But anyway, we were discussing the fact that just imposing tariffs for the purpose of bringing back jobs to America may have made sense in the 1820s, may have made sense in the 1930, but the practicality of doing it now is not the same as it was then. And what I was, there could be some overlap here to the audience. I apologize. But the idea that we're just going to bring these things back is crazy. It's just not realistic. And I was starting to say that I did not know anything about how tariffs were imposed. I didn't think a president could just impose them. And I don't know what Congress did back 100 years ago and 200 years ago. But Congress has done nothing. And it's because Trump has declared a state of emergency So he's using the Emergency Powers Act to say, I can just do this because we're in a state of emergency. And Congress has been completely cut out of the loop. And that completely overrides the function of our fucking government. Our government is supposed to have checks and balances. Financial obligations are supposed to be approved by Congress. They're being completely circumvented, and Congress has been utterly feckless. I mean, just totally toothless. Now, there have been some Republican members of Congress who are saying, like, oh, it's going to work itself out. Great, Trump. But we have farmers in my community, in my district, that aren't going to survive this work it out period. And that is possibly the only thing that's going to save us as a country and as an economy, is for Congress to grow a pair of balls and say, we have a role in our government, and it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene shrieking like a psycho or Lauren Boebert jerking someone off to Beetlejuice the musical. And yes, I'll slip that in anytime I get a chance. Congress is supposed to have a role in controlling presidential powers, and they have abandoned them. And if that doesn't get corrected, we're fucked, if we're not already fucked.
Well, I mean, I think that we need to think about how I have to look at things. I try to be objective, right? I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when you're trying to be objective, you need to look at the big picture, look at the plan. You can't necessarily look at the immediate impact and the immediate effects of things, and you have to see, like, if it goes well, how it would look, if it goes bad, how it would look. And so, look, I don't like Trump. I don't like a lot of his messaging, policies. There's nothing about him I like. There's nothing about his administration that I like. He's put a lot of, yes men and sycophants in control. But let's just say this works, right? So what's their plan? Their plan is essentially to lower yields, right? You lower yields, that lowers interest rates. That means debt is cheaper to pay back. We've got trillions of dollars in debt. So if we could bring those rates down, then that means that's less money that we have to pay. We save money on interest. Now, right? Again, this is just what their plan is, right?
Okay.
Look, that's not debatable, right? In terms of what they're trying to do. They've said it. This is backed by economists. This is understanding finance and economics. So, lowering the yields to ease debt. Spending cuts to help restore fiscal discipline, right, which is the whole thing with Doge and Elon Musk. Tariffs are used to trigger the economy because you institute tariffs, then the other countries say, oh my God, you instituted tariffs. We have to come to the negotiating table and have better free trade. And because of these tariffs, it brings manufacturing back to the U.S., right? That's, again, their goal and what they want to happen. And then essentially everything gets readjusted, right? We've got better trade deals. We've got lower interest rates. They want to cut taxes for people. And by cutting taxes and getting rid of the income tax and making a consumption tax, this all works better for people because they've got more money in their pocket. And then we lose the income tax, right? So the government loses the money that comes in from the income tax, but that money is replaced then by tariffs and better trade deals and better overall production. Now, that's the happy sort of image that they want to project, right? So if it all works out, you get your debt under control, manufacturing comes back to the U.S., and we've got more global leverage. But the more probable outcome of all this, right, is we see increased inflation. We see interest rates go up. We're already starting to see the retaliation. We already talked about how we're not going to be able to match production, right, for various reasons, in terms of our labor force and also in terms of how long it would take for us to get that infrastructure into place. And what it does is, like, look, Trump's got about another, 18 months for all this to sort of shake out and start to see real positive gain before it obviously threatens midterms and threatens his presidency, right?
Yeah.
Because if this all goes south, right, in 18 months, we don't start to see things really looking bright and rosy.
It's less than that, right? Because 18 months is the midterms.
Right, 18.
But
so, I mean, really, I guess
12.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, we'll say like 14, whatever. But yeah, I mean, okay. But point being, like, he's got a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half, for all this to shake out, where people are seeing, like, the people on the ground, not the talking heads. You can't go off of, if you're on X or Twitter. Or Facebook, I deleted Facebook because the ridiculousness on Facebook, I just had to delete it. Both political and personal, like you just realize how really stupid people are, and it's depressing. So I got rid of it. But you can't go by social media. You have to go by the actual real world, right? And if we're not,
those things blur together, by the way.
If we're not seeing the type of economic benefit that Trump is talking about, that they're touting. Right. If we're not seeing lower prices in the grocery store, lower gas prices, people aren't making more money. People are just more generally comfortable. The average person just is more financially comfortable.
Ability to buy a house and finance a house.
Yeah, all those sort of things. Or if we're just seeing just a ton of downward pressure on middle-class Americans where they just feel like there's no relief, everything costs more, people are losing jobs, and kind of what everyone is anticipating will happen, given what we know about tariffs in the past and how the rest of the world is reacting right now today. Again, this not only threatens the midterms, threatens his presidency, and my fear is that if it goes south, right, are there people in his administration that are actually hoping that it fails? Because, you put that downward pressure on the middle class, people are going to be upset, they're going to lash out, and then does the administration use that as a way to sort of seize more control? And by seizing more control, that means basically restricting rights. Does it go as far as like, martial law? Because you see a dictator, right, in a role, and when things really go shitty for dictators, right, they just start pulling away people's rights and start demanding more control and like trying to force people into, the dictator's belief system, right, and showing strength through force and everything else. Like, is that the direction that he starts to go? And then what happens, right? Now, I know that's a lot of doom and gloom, but look, the reality is that we have enough historical data on how tariffs go bad for the U.S. We're already seeing the rest of the world starting to, the rest of the world is starting to renegotiate agreements, but those are renegotiating agreements excluding the U.S.
Yeah.
They're not bending a knee. They're not, they're not capitulating. Right, they're saying, like, look, if this is the way that you guys, like, Canada came out and flat out said it, right? Like, look, if this is how you guys want to go, then fine. We would love to be partners with you still. We've been partners with you for, an extended period of time. But if this is how you're going to act, then boom, retaliatory tariffs will cozy up even more with Europe. Will cozy up even more with other,
China, yeah.
Other leaders throughout the world, China, and because Trump's plan is they think that this is putting pressure on China. Right, all the talking heads on social media are talking about, China doesn't know what to do. They're shook. What are the, look, China has been making inroads both militarily and economically throughout the world for the last 20 years. Right, they've been going out and doing some of the different work, like picking up, right, where the U.S. kind of falls off, right, like over in Africa. The U.S. goes over there. They want to. The U.S. and China. The reasons are the same, right? It's about the precious
rare earth minerals.
Yeah, rare earth minerals and all the different things that is in the ground in Africa. They don't really give a shit about the people. And the U.S. goes in, throws the hammer down, kills a bunch of rebels that are threatening a mine or whatever. They play around with the government. They do all these different things over there, and then they leave it a mess. Where China is going in and is like, hey, we're going to build roads and we're going to bring you water and everything. And Africans are like, hey, Chinese don't suck so bad. Even though the Chinese are only bringing in the Chinese to build these roads and everything else, it just seems like the Chinese are taking the approach of honey, right, where the U.S. is, here's a shit-smeared hammer, right? And I just, and look, when you pull out USAID and everything else that we're trying to do.
I was going to go there in a second. Like, the whole point of USAID was we would say Yeah,
but I mean, to what you were about to say is USAID, right? And us using nonprofits and helping these countries was sort of our way to sort of not necessarily back channel, that's not the right word, but to help provide
goodwill.
Yeah, the sort of soft care that's needed to help sort of these countries that are in need, right? And by doing so, that allowed us to, it wasn't all goodwill, right? A lot of it was we're going to use this U.S. aid to help create these sort of backdoor channels so we could talk about how to have a better relationship, or we could talk about how to make sure that we've got a stable region so that the resources that they have are protected, right? Let's not say it was all, happy rainbows and butterflies.
That's the way it's presented. There is a clear motivation behind the scenes.
But,
that is,
all that to say is that with the stuff that China's doing, China has tried to have a greater voice in the UN, and that voice has been about coming together and working together more. And look, we know that they've got their own plan, but they're saying the right things out loud on the national stage or on the world stage. And these other countries are starting to listen, even if they don't want to, because the whole point was like, look, screw you, China. Like, we've got the U.S. and everything else, but now the U.S. is basically acting like China did, 30 years ago, right? It's just like, all right, well, it's America first, and we're sort of contracting to within ourselves, and it's just going to be us isolated on this island. We're going to do our own thing. Okay, well, the rest of the world is out there saying, like, all right, if the U.S. is going to try to fuck this all up, then we need to figure out how to operate without them, right? Or with minimal input from them. And other countries had been talking about this before, right? We've heard about BRICS and, removing the U.S. currency as the main currency and coming up with, like, this conversation has been in effect for a while, and Trump is just accelerating it. And he thinks that somehow that works out for the U.S., but there's nothing to indicate that it does. And so, like, people just trying to be objective have been questioning the methodology, the motives, the thought process, everything going about this, and they're just hitting us with tropes. They're just hitting us with little zingers and blaming Biden and blaming, well, the economy was a mess because of Biden, right? So we have to do that, like, and what they're going to do is like, look, everything was so bad because of Biden, so we had to take these drastic measures. If they work, we're great. If they don't work, then it's because of Biden, right? Like, that's literally the direction they're going. Now, mind you, they're ripping apart things that had been set in place long before Biden was in office, but still, it's all Biden's fault because, like, that's just we know their game.
Our trade agreement with Canada was something that Trump implemented and bragged about.
Right.
So there's that. But we've talked about this on some levels multiple times. When you have to deal with when you try to have an argument or have a discussion with a dishonest actor, it's impossible. Yeah. Because you say, like, under Biden, the stock market was this. Well, that was because of Trump. Okay. Now the stock market's crashing. That's because of Biden. And, I know I deal with it. I'm sure you do too. Whenever you have these conversations, you talk to people and their willingness to just not deal with reality.
Yeah, but I mean, I also don't. I don't really get in many of these debates anymore, right? Like, and look, it is.
I do, and I probably
know,
shouldn't.
It's because to me, it's a waste of time. I don't put myself in situations where I'm going to be having these conversations, right? Like, I'm not. I do get into political conversations, but there's a little bit of a test that goes through, like, are you a rational person? Okay, great, we could talk. If you're not, then have your beliefs. I don't care. You're going to hell in a handbasket, right? Not that you're going to hell because you're a bad person, but the situation is devolving rapidly. I just, when you're talking about how is Trump doing this? Oh, he's using the Emergency Power Act. Look, yeah, I guess. I mean, listen, right now the issue is in Congress, you've got so many people, both in the House and in the Senate, that just have no spine whatsoever, right?
Completely true.
Especially on the Republican side, right? Like, even if they vehemently disagree with all this, like, none of them have the balls to just come out and say it and push back, because they'll,
you can't
Trump
defy
will,
the glorious leader.
Right. Well, Trump will retaliate and demand that they get, we'll look at him for impeachment.
Primaries.
And they'll
whatever.
demand that they get primaried and all that other stuff. And it's like, look, if you're actually fighting for your constituents and you know what what's happening at the top is wrong, then you still have to fight for the constituents. Hope that they see that you're doing the right thing. And then if they vote you out, that's because they didn't want you, and the people's will wins, right? But at least you went out fighting for them, as opposed of, well, I just went along with it because that's what the leader said to do, and if it all went bad, it's not my fault, blame the leader. It's like, no, I'm blaming you because you were there. I put you in office to fight for me for what was right. Right? I put you in office to fight for these sort of things, and then this guy comes in and you just do whatever he says, and now you've hurt me, you've hurt us, so now you have to go. But we live in a weird time.
We do live in a weird time, and I am seeing some stuff on videos on YouTube and conversations in person where people are starting to say, oh, this isn't what I signed up for. So there's a lot of people who are like, I didn't like Kamala or Biden because of X, and they won't say because it was a black woman, but
it doesn't matter why.
All right, fine. But they're now starting to come back and say, oh shit, this guy is completely out of touch, and now it's hurting me.
Okay, so what you just did there, this is why Democrats have the hardest fucking time getting on board, right? All you had to say was there are people coming back, right, realizing that the vote for Trump was wrong because it's directly impacting them. Right? And if you do that, those people that are coming back to the middle, right? And they're just like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Right? But when you say they're coming back, no, they won't say it's because it was like when you say that, right?
Well, they will clarify.
Because listen, you got somebody coming back that's admitting that they made a mistake, right? But now you're coming and saying, well, they're admitting they're making a mistake, but they're not going to say the real reason why, that they wouldn't vote for her because they're racist because she's a black woman. Right? That is literally what you just said. You didn't use the word racist, but you said they won't admit that they wouldn't vote for Kamala because she's a black woman. Yeah. Right? Now, as someone who, listen, there's no one that likes to be sort of checked, right? But if you're offering an olive branch, right? If I offer you an olive, or right? If you offer me an olive branch, right, and you, Jim, admit that you were wrong about something, right, and I take it and say, yeah, but you're not admitting the full reason why, it's because you're an asshole, you're like, all right, well, fuck you, give me my olive branch back and go off and do whatever. Right, like that whole thing where you have to, the part where you got to critique them on the reason why they wouldn't vote for Kamala was because she was a black woman. That's where you lose people. That's what drove them away in the first place, because everyone was calling anyone who even thought about voting for Trump a racist, right? We can have the conversation about racism. We know that it exists. We know that it's deep-rooted, and it probably hasn't been resolved since the Civil War. Whole separate-ass conversation, right? But again, I'm going to ask you the question that I've asked in the past. What's more important right now in this moment? That we win, or are we right? Right? And so right now, right there, when you just had to you had to throw that little dig in about Kamala, it was more important that you were right than that you win. I'm just telling you.
No, that's fine. Because
if you've got a person that's coming back to the fray who was a Trump supporter and saying, man, this shit is a shit show. Right? But then you immediately go to the jab of, yeah, well, if you would have voted for Kamala instead of being a racist asshole, we wouldn't be here. What is that person going to do? They're going to go tell you to suck your dick. Suck your own dick. Get out of here.
No, I hear what you're saying. I'm not even going to argue with that. And we've gone back and forth on this multiple times on the show and in private about how saying you did this because of and I guess I did go there. You're right. Fine. I went there. I'm also not wrong, because there are people who did it for that reason. But you're right.
But again, you're putting the need to be right over the fucking win.
Okay.
I need to win. I don't give a fuck if you're right. I need to win. I need this guy out of office. I need people to stop going to the ballot booth and voting for him. Right? But if you continue to shove the fact that people who are just regular ass average white people, right? That are really stuck in the middle, right? That maybe they did, and we don't know what their reasons are, because I can tell you there are a lot of people who just weren't going to vote Democrat because of the gun issue. We've had this conversation a million times, right? But even them, they're starting to cut because they're not completely comfortable with Kash Patel and some of the shit that he's doing, right? Like, so if you've got an opportunity to bring people back to your side, like we collectively, the other side, have to subdue our desire to throw the digs in and bring them back.
Rub a puppy's nose and shit is not the way to bring people
exactly.
back. Okay, I agree, and I did go there. That was not my intention, but it's how it came out, and you're not distorting my words, so I'll acknowledge that. Having said that, there are people who are saying, "Oh shit, this isn't going the way I wanted." I've had a few friends who are very anti-Democratic Party when it comes to voting, talk to me and say, this isn't what I signed up for. And so when I'm having these conversations one-on-one, I'm not rubbing their nose and shit. I'm not calling.
Well, that's good.
Well, yeah, but you're right. I did.
I mean, because we go to the time and place doctrine, right?
Right.
Like,
okay.
We're throwing a little legalese at you, but I mean,
it's very different when you're talking to a person that's a friend of yours versus me spouting off on a podcast.
But it is important because, like, we may not be Joe Rogan in terms of our audience. Clearly,
we are not Joe Rogan. Although he's getting close. He keeps getting closer to us lately.
Stop right now.
He keeps getting closer. Not saying close. Closer.
I think we need to be going that direction.
I agree.
But there are still people that listen to us.
Bring us closer. I still listen to Joe Rogan.
I never listen to Joe Rogan.
I know.
So, but
I listened this week.
But my point is, there are people who do listen to us, and I think we do a good job of trying to be in the middle and be objective. And I think we have a responsibility. Like, if we care about the direction this country is going, we want to bring people in. We don't want to push them away. And I think even people who listen to the show, when they hear you're coming back to the fray, but you won't acknowledge that you're a racist, it's just like, okay, well, fuck it, never mind, right? Like, it's off-putting. And even if it's right, again, I think there is a time and place to have the discussion about racism and the deeply rooted reasons why people did what they did when they voted just this past year to vote for Trump, and what they were either fully agreeing with or were okay enough with it, right? Like, they may not fully agree with it, but they weren't against it enough to stop them from voting for Trump. I think there's a time and place to have that discussion, but in this moment right now, because tariffs don't give a shit what race you are, right? They still crush your economy the same, so like right now we need to all be on the same team, right? We could worry about the racial shit and all that other stuff in another conversation. I'm just saying right now is probably not the time to start that.
I want to say a couple things. One, tariffs crushing the economy actually affects people who have money in stock markets more than on people who don't. I know I've gotten kicked in the balls. Now, I also want to say, hold on. I also want to say that there are probably people, and I will say this with certainty, who saw this coming and are profiting massively by shorting markets because they predicted this would happen. Maybe some of them who influenced it. And I also want to go back to Joe Rogan for a second, because you're not a fan of Joe Rogan. I have been. I've got my issues with the guy. If you could see Steve's body slump when I said the name Joe Rogan again, it would be awesome to have it on video. But he strikes me as the guy who is salvageable. I think he did a nosedive. He got pushed around over COVID and how he handled all that. Picked up his shit, moved from California to Texas, and said, fuck it, I'm tired of all this liberal nonsense. But I do think he's capable of thinking and checking himself, and he did it recently with all the deportations to El Salvador, where he heard about the guy who was deported. He was a gay hairdresser who had tattoos on his arms that said nothing related to gang shit. And Joe Rogan is on his show saying that's horrific, that's terrible. And right-wingers are calling Joe Rogan out for being too woke. And other folks are saying, okay, this guy has the ability to check himself. So I want to get that out there. I can sense there.
Will you stop carrying water for Joe Rogan? He is a comfortable multimillionaire 20 times over, 100 times over, right? Like, he don't need you to fucking carry water for him, right?
I know,
but I'm stop doing. Dude he's so out of the stratosphere, not connected to reality. I don't care how much weed he smokes and jokes around, right? Like, he's already shown us who he is, right? If he was willing to shift because people said, yeah, Joe, I don't think it's a good idea that you're telling people to take fucking ivermectin, which is a parasite they use on horses and cows. And then so he gets upset about that and storms off and takes his ball and go home. I don't fucking want him. Do whatever the fuck he wants to do. I don't care if he's eligible or whatever. He's a fucking flake. If that's the reason why you're just going to lose all common sense in terms of the direction of the country because you're throwing a temper tantrum because of because no one else wants to eat horse glue like you do, then I don't fucking need you, right? And I get so fucking sick and tired of all these other, people.
You can direct this.
No, but you're not the only one. You're not the. It's a bunch of people who podcast at our level, constantly fighting for Joe Rogan. When is Joe Rogan going to fight for you? When is Joe Rogan going to fucking fight for us? That's my question. You're over here he's redeemable and he's okay, so we should support him. Fuck him. He should support us. That motherfucker could buy this whole block 10 times over, no problem. Joe Rogan, you support the little guy. Stop fucking pumping up all these other people. You support us, and you motherfuckers, you and everyone else, stop fucking supporting Joe Rogan until he does something that's worth a shit for guys at our level. And don't tell me some bullshit comic because he probably had that shit don't count. Okay, comics are all incestuous.
Well, no, that's not true. Comics are not incestuous. They're very cliquey.
I don't care. I don't like you.
Okay.
I don't like the comic scene.
I'm aware. My reason, and I do, and I'm very, very minorly part of it. But I do respect the fact that he has people on his show who disagree with him. He has. Have you been paying attention to what Bill Burr's doing? Because it's been fucking awesome. He's been lighting up Elon Musk left, right, and sideways. And let me use that as a segue, because Elon Musk dropped $25 million into a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, which none of us would have given a fuck about outside of Wisconsin and maybe inside of Wisconsin, and Elon lost.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that he just dropped money into, campaigns. He was literally offering money, thousands of dollars to people.
Like a lottery, right?
You vote, if you vote and show that you proved that you voted, he was going to give you, whatever.
$1 million?
No, well, he had $1 million, and he was going to give, each person who showed him, $1,000, right? Until they had him. Okay. It wasn't one person was going to get it.
What I saw was different. I saw the whole big check-handing bullshit thing.
It was a check for $1,000. It was a big check.
Oh, okay. I thought for $1 million. All right.
It's the difference between 3 zeros and 2
I know what zeros look like. Anyway, but first of all, that's election tampering. All this bullshit about, Democrats are trying to steal elections. This is literally a multi-billionaire trying to...
What's crazy is the rebuttal is, George Soros did it for years. So he's doing it right now.
Which is... A horseshit argument. We both know that. But.
And it's one of those things, and pardon me for what I'm about to say. God damn it, I wish he would fucking die. Right? And the reason why is just because but even if George Soros were to die, it doesn't matter.
That doesn't save shit.
And then, I thought, because I saw something a few months, probably a year ago, that George Soros was sick, and I was like, finally. But then I see, he's got a son who's 40 years old, and is just running around and, canoodling with all the Democrats and Hollywood stars. I'm like, oh my God, it's the same fucking thing. So George Soros is going to die. His son is going to take over. And his son is going to be the new fucking boogeyman.
George Soros is,
taking it back, though. The whole family needs to disappear into the Twilight Zone.
But no, Steve, all right, I'm going to push back on you because it doesn't fucking matter. They'll still be used as a boogeyman. If George Soros' son was...
Yeah, you're not wrong. It doesn't go away if they go away because it's already been established.
Horseshit. It's all fucking horseshit. So, all right. The Wisconsin Supreme Court race does not go Elon's way. Elon looks bad.
But I mean, and that was a critical. That was a critical race because
redistricting was a big issue.
Yes, redistricting. Congressional seats and listen, we talked about this before, but the Republicans are in trouble because of everything that's going on. Their seats are not safe, right? Elise Stefanik, she ends up losing, her bid to go to the UN at the very last minute. Like, we talked about it before, but she was literally packed up and out and ready to, move into her new loft in New York. And then all of a sudden finds out she's going back to Congress because her seat's not safe. A number of Republican strongholds are, they can't ignore the volatility of the situation right now, talking about the stock markets, but they can't ignore the volatility of the situation and how they're literally on thin ice in terms of losing the House. And, if this really, everything with the tariffs and the markets, and we really start to feel the pressure like we've kind of predicted, the Senate could be in play as well. There's a lot on the line here. And, that's why that Wisconsin election was so important. And to your point, Elon knew it, dumps $25 million in publicly, right? Because you've got a lot of billionaires who'll throw millions of dollars in, but they do it quietly.
Sure.
Right. But Elon was loud and proud about it and just assumed that, goading people with money because he was Elon Musk and everything else was going to have this big, massive effect. Because I think that he thinks that his, injection of, I think, $250 million into the presidential election was the reason why Trump won it. I mean, look, it helped because Trump needed the money.
Also his control of social media, a.k.a. Twitter.
But I think it was the control of social media that was probably more of an impact than the money that he put in. The money bought him access to Trump. But I don't think that's why Trump won. Trump won because the people who voted for him, that's what they wanted. It's everything, for whatever reason, everything that he said and was saying was right up their alley. Right now, if you want to have a conversation about
it being bullshit, like end the Ukraine war in a day,
all that sort of stuff, but it was right what he told them what they wanted to hear. They said that's all we need. Go right, and now what Elon Musk just found out was like, okay, it wasn't just money. There's something else here underlying. There's a bigger issue here that we now have to deal with. And I think what you're going to see is he's going to realize that it is the power of social media. It is the power of controlling the narrative, and that's going to get cranked up even more. And you can already see it.
And I have been super. I mean, my stance on Donald Trump is well documented. And if we do end up in a totalitarian dictatorship, I might get executed. Not hoping that happens, but I certainly wouldn't want to be in front of a Trump-led tribunal. Having said that, you and I are very politically engaged. And when I vote for this reason and calling back to your, I didn't tell people one-on-one, it's because you're a racist, because you're a sexist. I didn't say that. I know a lot of cases where that was actually the motivation, but you're right. That's not a winning strategy. We're talking strategy versus reality. Those are very different things. But the people that are doing this shit do it with relatively little engagement until the final 10 yards of the football field. And, when you say things like, well, Trump called the men who died during the Normandy invasion losers. No, he didn't. I mean, we have congressional testimony saying they did, but they don't fucking know this shit.
Again, that's where I go to. Why are you even fighting that fight at this point?
See, right? You're right.
You're
right.
when it initially happened, if you wanted to, okay, but now at this point, you bring that up often, and I get why, but at the same time, bro, we get that shit is not helping.
I'm feeding the argument you just made. I'm feeding you that being right versus winning are not necessarily conducive with one another. I do think that people have grown tired of Elon Musk.
No,
here's
the reason why. Because people are attacking Tesla dealerships, setting the cars on fire, putting people in danger. That's
stupid.
Obviously
it's
stupid.
criminal,
But
no doubt.
but I mean, there are, and so because of that, if that doesn't happen, I think everything stays the same, but you don't see these attacks on the dealerships. You don't see the attacks on Tesla cars, right? You don't see just, your far left progressive just doing the shit that they do, just taking things too far. Then I think the Elon Musk fatigue would be way more evident. And I think that you would see a lot more pressure coming from the White House to get rid of him. I think that all of that exists, but there's still a little juice to squeeze out of that rock because of the shit that's going on with his dealerships, right? Because that can allude to the left being...
It vilifies the violent left.
Right, and then they can, even though it's a few people, right, they're applying it to the whole group, and they're using it as another talking point to, sort of justify their actions. And this is why these people can never get back into control. And I'm telling you, they're trying to use it as an argument to say that, basically like Democrats are enemies of the state. And then it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to, take it even further.
Now, all right. I'm not going to argue with anything you just said because you're 100% valid. I am going to be a dick for a moment, or we might say more than a moment, but
your entire existence.
Okay, fine.
Proceed.
Who has been the most anti-Cybertruck person on the planet from the word go?
Me.
You.
Me.
I mean, I remember when that thing came out. I love the story because you stayed up late.
I did.
You were...
Dude, I don't know how many times I've told this story, but look, I was so excited about that. Listen, I love trucks. I've always loved trucks. When I was a little kid, they used to call me Tonka, right? Because I always had a Tonka truck. Then it went to Tank. We understand why. And then, I've always had...
I just pushed this button.
Yes, but I've always had like a 4x4 big truck, whatever. So, but here's the downside of driving trucks with big engines is that they suck a lot of gas, right?
Yeah.
So we were starting to hear about the specs of the Cybertruck, and the specs on the truck were pretty amazing, right? In terms of,
towing capacity, horsepower,
all this other stuff.
Sure.
And it's just like, oh my God, I'm not going to have to stop at a gas tank every fucking time I pass one, or a gas station every time I pass one. And my whole thing was, I don't really care. I'm not an environmentalist. I don't really care about all that stuff.
I am.
Right? But my whole thing is just like, look, if you tell me you can give me a truck that has the look and feel of what I'm used to and what I like, but I don't have to go to a gas station, I can just plug it in, or it's a sensible hybrid, whatever, then I would love to try it, and I think I'm all in. Everything I'm hearing is that this is what Elon Musk is bringing, Tesla. And you got to understand, there were also rendering. People were making guesses of what the truck was gonna look like. So they would take a little bit of the Ram 1500. They would take a little bit of the Silverado. They would make these really cool ass renderings of trucks. Like, fuck yeah, look at that thing. It's aggressive. It's wide bodied. Right? It's like a TRX on steroids, but yet it is electric. So I was all about it, and I stay up. I had to be at work early, I had to be at the gym early, a lot of all that stuff going on. I don't care. I'm finally going to see my dream truck. And, there's a big to-do. There's a red carpet. The kid, Marcus Brownlee, who does all the tech reviews, was there, and there was so much excitement. And I remember I was waiting to watch it, but then I really had to take a shit. So I go to the bathroom, and I'm watching on my phone, on the toilet, watching on my phone. And then they unveil the truck, and I'm like, what? What is this? And so I'm like, this must be the first prototype, right? And then they're going to show us the evolution of how we got to the final design. And then he comes out, and he's talking, and this is the actual truck. And then, I watched this for an hour and a half of just bullshit with that awful 1982 design of a monstrosity and an abomination of a 4x4 truck. And it doesn't even have a functional bed. And this is the thing. Look at the giant windshield wiper. It's the biggest windshield wiper in the world. What?
It is bulletproof, but it's not.
Right, it's bulletproof. Watch me as I hit this window with a bat and it breaks. That's not bulletproof, dipshit. We'll get that figured out.
All right.
But it just, that whole thing. And so since then, I've hated Elon Musk. It has nothing to do with his politics. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with him being from South Africa and his family
Diamond
pushing apartheid. It has nothing to do with his 27 kids and his hating of his trans child. I don't care about any of that. The whole reason I hate Elon Musk is because of that fucking Cybertruck.
All right, I do owe an apology to our audience because I pushed a button and I knew where it was going to go. I've had to live this discussion multiple times. It needed to come back out now, and I've been laughing in the background because I knew I just had to. This is literally like the dude.
So if anybody should be blowing up a Tesla dealership, it's me.
It should be you.
But if
and you just say like it's not because of this.
Right.
Like I lit this fuse because your truck is douchey,
because
stupid,
of that fucking Cybertruck,
and it wasted a day of my life. All right, I did that on purpose. It was that you wanted to call me out.
That's fine.
Payback.
That's fine. I'm just saying, but I'm not the one blowing up the Tesla dealerships. So if I don't get to blow one up, if I don't get to blow one up, nobody does. So stop it.
All right. I want to talk about two things real quick. I saw a headline that said, momentum is a totally changing subject. Going to sports now. Jameis Winston signed with the New York Giants. Russell Wilson signed with the New York Giants. They had a quarterback situation, and I'm seeing these articles and legitimate actual people who get paid to talk sports saying Jameis Winston should be cut because of what he said. And I'm like, all right, I'll buy the clickbait, and I clicked it. Did you see any of this?
No.
Okay, so the clickbait was Jameis Winston did a farewell to Cleveland tweet, whatever, and basically said, thank you, Cleveland, for your time, for embracing me. I, was glad to be part of your organization. The highlight of my career in Cleveland was beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. Stephen is Steelers garb as we say this. It was a Monday night game or a Thursday night game. It was a primetime game, and it was snowing, and he was playing against the Russell Wilson-led Pittsburgh Steelers. And there's people saying they should cut Jameis Winston because he was trash-talking Russell Wilson. And I'm like, that is the dumbest argument or dumbest comment I've heard in fucking forever. First of all, he was just doing a classy thing and saying, farewell, Cleveland. I had a great time here. Here was my highlight moment. Even if it was kind of a jab at Russell Wilson, which I don't believe it was, even if it was, they're competitors. They're athletes. They were on the field competing against one another. He came out on top. Yeah, they're in the same team now. But for him to say, this was the highlight of my career in Cleveland is understandable, accurate, and not offensive. And for fucking national or at least regional sports radio folks to say they should cut Winston now because he's undermining the team is such a shitbag argument, and the headline is so stupid. And I'm as guilty as anyone of getting sucked into clickbait headlines, which is a huge problem.
So yeah, and that's the thing. The only way to really sort of fight against that is to literally not click the bait.
Is it or is it to call out bullshit? Because I'm saying it's to call out bullshit.
I mean, you just like to call out bullshit.
I do. And I don't apologize for that at all.
That's to appease your own personal thing. But if we're really talking about how does this stuff continue to happen, it happens because people continue to click on it, people continue to talk on it, and it just the whole point is click on my thing, and then I can get advertising dollars.
Okay,
the more people who click on it, right? So now people are going to be like, oh, well, what did Jameis Winston say? So they listen to the show and they go and they click on it. So then their clicks go up, and then they get paid for more ad revenue.
I totally disagree because when you
literally how advertising works.
Well, okay, thank you. But
the whole point of doing this stuff is to get advertising.
But the real problem is that people don't click on it. They read the headline and they say, oh, Jameis Winston should get... And this happens in politics all the time.
But politics in the NFL are different. You know why? Because NFL teams don't really give a fuck what their fans think.
There's that.
They don't. They don't make decisions based on what... the Bills aren't going to make a decision on what the fucking Bills Mafia wants. They do not care. Right? Like,
true.
They literally are going to draft who they want to draft.
I need the NFL draft to happen tomorrow so I can stop clicking on shit there. Right. You're right. But going beyond sports,
okay,
it so
those are two different things. And so, and you know me in football. If we're going to talk football, I want to talk football. This is not football. This is on the periphery, right?
Right, sure.
And so to this, like, I don't want to give it oxygen, right? Like, and it's like, oh, well, you should be mad they're talking about the Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers played a shit game. They lost. It was a terrible game plan. And I had counted it as a loss. I went to the game. I was there. I was literally at the game. I forgot.
Yes, you were.
You know, I was at the game. This is when I had 2 fucking working legs. It was actually something wild to see with the amount of snow that literally came out of nowhere. Like, Jim,
dude, I'm from Buffalo.
I understand. Well, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're from Buffalo. Enough said. But this is just this is not a serious topic.
You're right, and I want to go with though is it happens in politics all the time, and people only.
But there's so many examples in politics that we could use. Why do you have to sully my sport? Oh. Football is something that I enjoy. I don't enjoy talking about this bullshit, and so if I have to talk about this bullshit, can't we just apply it to the shit that?
All right, yes,
impacts
yes, we can,
right?
Because that was really where I wanted to go. Is you see this shit in headlines, and people don't click it. They don't learn the backstory, and they just see. There was one the other day. Obama admits.
No, please don't do this. Well, hold on, and here's why. What you're saying is important when it comes to politics because people, those same people are literally like, they're allowed to vote. And they do vote.
And they do.
Right? And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? And I think
we're at now, yes.
I think there's a huge distinction in football because, again, NFL teams don't give a shit about what fans think. It's almost like NFL teams sometimes do shit just opposite of what the fans want just to do the opposite, right? Because sometimes
the fans want to stupid.
Right, because they do some of the dumbest shit sometimes. And I think so. Football, there's a good lesson to be learned in football, right? It's just like, all right, well, cool. All the people are saying this, but we're going to do the thing that is right for the team, right? And then the good teams who do what's right for the team, a la, Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, whatever, the teams that have been perennially in the
lately. Historically, you could.
Yeah, but
Buffalo was a shit show for years. So
right,
I appreciate the throwback, but
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing where we're not going to listen to the fans and we're just going to do what's right for the team as we see fit. Like, you see how that works out, right? Now, the fans say all this stuff. Now, where it could have an impact, you say something, there's clickbait about a player, and then a player's got to deal with all this sort of stuff in the media. And okay, yeah. But in reality, teams talk about distractions and all that other stuff, and they love that. But that's a talking point. I'm a guy who spent a lot of time in a locker room, and I could tell you that once you're on the field, you play. Now, the caveat is, like, when you got, like, Deshaun Watson level distractions, yeah, that could impact you on the field. But it's him who it impacts, and we saw it, right? Now, he's a quarterback, so then it ends up impacting the whole team, but, like, it was his specific actions that did that. That wasn't the rumor mill, right? That's shit that he actually did, and it generated so much shit that it did have this sort of impact because he couldn't perform to the level that he needed to, and it impacts the whole team. But typically, when you're talking about sports and clickbait, like, that stuff, there is a huge deal made about it in the media. But another example would be Kobe, right? Kobe's flying from Colorado on a serious rape charge and then drops 60 points. So some people it doesn't affect, right? But sports is different than politics. And so I think that it's not an apt comparison.
Fine, but I was wanting to go there because of the clickbait and the more important.
Keep those conversations away from my sacred football.
Read the headline.
That is the rule.
People who just read the headline, extrapolate.
How are you preaching this at me?
I'm not doing it.
I've yelled at you about reading headlines and not reading the entire article.
And I.
But see, my lessons have taken effect.
That's your all right. That's your.
I'm taking credit for it.
Your victory lap. I've seen so much shit in the political realm, and so Joe Rogan's YouTube channel is no longer. Hold on, relax. No longer the most popular one. It is now the Midas Touch, which I listen to all the time, and they are the worst when it comes to clickbait.
I don't know what that is. I've heard of it, but I don't know. Who are they? Are they conservative?
No, very liberal. Very liberal. And they will do, every headline is, Trump implodes. And then I watch the video they show, and I'm like, okay, Trump trumped. But they are clickbait monsters.
Can we talk about Kilmer?
We can. We'll wrap it up. We got to talk about Val Kilmer, because we lost a national treasure. Val Kilmer had All right. If I'm a huge fan of Val Kilmer.
Okay, let me just.
All right.
Before you
have
do
your
this,
moments, and I'll have mine.
Well, mine is very short.
It's gonna be about Heat, isn't it?
Here's my thing. If I'm discussing Val Kilmer, there are only 3 movies that we're talking about. Okay. The first.
I guess?
No.
Okay.
The first is Top Gun.
All right.
The second is Heat. The third is Tombstone. After that, I don't give a fuck about Jim Morrison. And there's not a single. You know what? The Saint wasn't terrible, but not great. And Batman was terrible.
Batman was terrible. I'll give you that.
And then all the other indie artsy movies.
No. You're missing out on some great comedies. Real Genius was my first exposure to Val Kilmer. It is a very funny movie where he is the absolute centerpiece.
Third person to tell me this.
Top Secret is a...
That can't even be... That I will never watch it because it shares a title with Top Gun, so fuck no.
No, Top Secret is so funny. He plays Nick Rivers, the guy who made it big in the skeet surfing community. So it's making fun of music and spy movies. Skeet surfing is literally guys on surfboards doing skeet shooting. It's hilarious, and it's the same guys who did the airplane movies. So it's goofy, stupid spoof comedy. But I loved it. He was in a movie called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is the
actually was a good movie.
Dumbest title ever. Right. Great fucking movie. Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. And Val Kilmer steals that movie. And that movie, I used to hate Robert Downey Jr., and that movie made me just completely flip scripts on the guy. I hated him because back when I was a kid and I was clean-cut, nerdy guy, and he was playing the drugged-out, addicted jackass. I'm like, he's not acting. He's just being what he is. I give Robert Downey Jr. a ton of credit for turning his life around. He's done some great movies since then. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang does not get nearly the credit it deserves. It's a funny, witty, thought-provoking in terms of like mystery kind of thing movie. And yes, I love Top Gun. Yes, I loved Tombstone. He's a great movie. Now, he's probably 5th billing in that movie. That is one of the most star-packed movies ever.
And I would say the issue, my issue with that, like my only issue with the movie Heat is actually Al Pacino. Right, he was the one who did not fit to me.
A little over the top.
Yeah, too over the top. Like, I mean, I just you know, even for a cop in L.A., it just didn't fit. Right?
Great ass.
Yeah, I just that was the one. But I still love the movie. I still have the actual double VHS tapes of that movie. Obviously, I'm a gun nut.
So we've talked about the gunplay in that movie is more accurate than almost any other movie I can think of.
So, like, you watch that movie on surround sound.
Oh boy!
Right when they're
the starbursts,
and you hear the brass hitting the ground. It is so loud. You listen to it loud enough. There have been times where I literally had to cover my ears, and I'm like, or I could just turn the volume down.
Solving your own problems, I respect that.
Right. Like, I've got 2 ways to solve this. I'm going to pick the dumbest one. But, yeah, I don't know. I fell in love with the movie. The first time I saw it, I can recite the movie from start to finish. You know, Ashley Judd is Val Kilmer's sort of wife, and, you know, she's standing on the balcony. She sort of gives him the sign. He turns and walks away. I'm just like, no, Chris, come back. I know you can't, though. You know, and then Tombstone, just that whole movie, that whole cast, even, I mean, who's the one dude? Billy Zane. Even Billy Zane's character is just like...
Michael Bain. Michael Bain.
That's not Billy Zane?
Johnny Ringo?
No. Billy Zane's the actor, right? Like the kind of fluffy actor that they end up killing. Like the
guy who plays Johnny Ringo, the I'm Your Huckleberry, that's Michael Bain.
Yeah, what the fuck does that have to do with what I'm talking about? I'm talking about Billy Zane's character.
In Tombstone?
Billy Zane is an actor.
I know who Billy Zane is.
He's in the movie Tombstone.
I don't believe he is.
Bro, are you fucking serious challenging me? Remember, he is the actor that's traveling with Wyatt Earp's, you know, soon to be, you know, I guess she's his mistress, and then she eventually turns into his wife. You know, when they're in the fucking stagecoach, they end up killing, you know, you killed him, and he was beautiful.
Yeah. Like, is that Billy Zane?
Yes, it's Billy Zane.
Okay. My bad. If I'm wrong, that's my bad.
You're wrong. Look it up right now.
I don't have my phone with me. No, all right. I know who Billy Zane is. He's awful in Titanic, but everyone was awful in Titanic.
Dude, my daughter asking me about why were there so many guns on the boat on Titanic and why there were no black people was one of the greatest nights of my life.
What?
Me and Eden wanted to watch Titanic. So we're watching the movie, and like you get through Titanic, there's a lot of people shooting guns on the boat, right? You know, and so like there's like multiple scenes where like someone has a gun or they're like shooting at Leonardo DiCaprio, right? So Eden's like, "Hey, Dad, if we go on a cruise, are you going to bring your gun? Because people seem to bring guns on boats." And I'm like, "Well, not allowed to, and that's probably for the best." And she's like, "Okay, good." And then like towards the end, she's like, "Yeah, not a lot of black people on this boat. Was that because of slavery?" I'm like, "Kiddo, this is one where we were okay not being on the
good not to be on that boat.
This one we're fine with.
It was leaving from Ireland. That was Billy Zane, wasn't it? Billy Zane is all right.
We're not talking about Billy Zane.
Right, we're not talking about Billy Zane. You ready to wrap it up?
Yeah.
We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and X. Conversation devolved.
Tombstone. Cast. Val Kilmer,
all right.
Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott,
I thought you were talking
Bean,
about Michael Bay.
Dana Delaney, Bill Braxton, rest in peace.
Yes.
Or Bill Paxton, sorry.
Billy Zane. No, you're right.
Yes.
Now I forgot about him, the actor on the Stagecoach.
I mean, it's my fault. That's a pull from outer space, but
No, it is what it is. All right, I'm out of here. I've been yelled at. My Billy Zane knowledge has been thoroughly challenged and successfully so. We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter. I'm going to go back to calling it Twitter because fuck you, Elon, and we're done.
Come on.